As an activist, photographer and songwriter Bev Grant has spent her entire adult life in liberation movements.
This guy came flying across the room, punched me in the chest. I fell back, hit my head on the edge of the piano, saw stars. I was knocked out. We also did some cover tunes, like I Got Murder in My Heart for the Judge. That was one of them. That was a good song. My goal is to try to emphasize our humanity, because that's where our empathy comes from.
In 1963, Bev and her husband Mike, a jazz musician, moved to New York, and she found her way into the struggle.
I was thinking about what was it that radicalized me. And it's not any one particular thing. I started seeing news things on television about the civil rights movement, seeing children being, hosed down in the demonstrations there, and the sit-ins down south, and just that kind of stuff that was happening seemed so outrageous, but far away at the same time. When Mike and I got an apartment, there was a woman who lived on the next floor, a woman named Elaine, African-American woman, who I became really, really close with. She was about 10 years older than me and was this super creative, warm, and just made me feel like something opened up. My own creativity opened up. And I got to know her lover, who was a trumpet player named Don Cherry, who used to play with Ornette Coleman. And Don became a good friend. So the house was full of music. Eventually, Ornette's drummer, Eddie Blackwell, moved in with his wife and his kid. And there would be jam sessions on the parlor floor where the piano was. And it was like all these guys that were, all guys, amazing amount of music in the house. And here I am, kind of a fly on the wall, going to work every day, but, basically just hanging out and absorbing the music, but having no way to express it myself. I left my husband for another musician. And I lived with him for a couple of years, which was mind-broadening in many ways, living with a person of color. The thing about that relationship was this man was really a male chauvinist as well. He would say things to me like, "I'll make a woman out of you," or "pretty girls are trouble." And I bought it. I felt flattered. And my partner had a friend who played trumpet who lived in our building. And he would come into the house all the time. And I would feed him because. But this guy, Dewey, he came over, knocked on the door one evening around dinner time, and I had just finished cooking. And my partner wasn't there. And I invited Dewey to come in. My partner came in and looked a little bit surprised, but we all sat down and we ate. And after that, Dewey left, and my partner took off his belt and whipped the shit out of me. Like all up and down my back, down my legs. I had welts, and I mean, I left and I went to a girlfriend's and he came and got me the next day. I went back with him. He never beat me again, but probably I didn't do anything to tee him off, Maybe I learned my lesson, but I did leave him maybe a year or so after that. It's bizarre, to talk about this stuff in a way and to share it. But I think, I'm not ashamed. I'm not like, it didn't kill my spirit, it just really is something I lived and I learned from. Then I moved to my own apartment, first apartment ever that was just me. And I met my next door neighbor, who was a young man from Colombia. He was kind of very poetic and fun. And we established a relationship. We would put on Ray Charles or Aretha Franklin and dance wildly. We went to Wall Street in the middle of the night with the steam coming up and we fucked in a doorway. It's like we started taking pictures, going to demonstrations. The anti-war movement was really, this would have been 1967. 2, 4, 6, 8, organize and smash the state. 2, 4, 6, 8, organize and smash the state. 2, 4, 6, 8, organize and smash the state. Out on the street one day, we were approached by somebody who suggested we attend a meeting of a group called NEWSREEL, which is a collective of filmmakers and photographers. So we started going to meetings, and it was a slow process for me. I was shy, and I didn't have confidence in myself yet, so I didn't speak up. But ultimately, I was in that group for 4 years, so I went through an enormous transition of gaining confidence, of learning the politics of revolution, and assuming leadership, ultimately. At the same time, though, Juan and I were, going to demos and aware of what was happening with the student movement. Students for a Democratic Society was in the news.
Colombia. These are members of Students for a Democratic Society. SDS. And what started as an action by a few hundred becomes a campus-wide strike.
That's right. Circulating around the crowd, people who appear to be troublemakers, most of them have long hair, are being led toward the police van. Okay. There's no place these students can go, but the policemen are pushing them nonetheless. Yes, they do. They have battering rams, and they have a tube for gas warfare. It looks like we will indeed be gassed.
One day we went to an SDS conference at Princeton University. It was just kind of on a whim. And we went and were looking at the program, and Juan said, look, there's this caucus on women's liberation. Why don't you go? And I thought, okay, and I went, and it was probably the most important and most influential thing in my life up to that point, because I was able to contextualize and understand the social context that my oppression was in, that I hadn't thought about it as oppression, but it was. And that was like, this is not my problem. This is a societal problem. This is the way women are treated. This is what the expectations are of us, and where we're supposed to, in the man's eye, supposed to be, and who we're supposed to be, and how we're supposed to act. That's none of their business, you know. I get to determine that. So, wow, that was such an epiphany. And the woman who led that caucus, or one of the women, was a woman named Jude Allen. She started having consciousness-raising groups in her apartment just a few blocks from where I lived. And I went there every week to a meeting. And a consciousness-raising meeting was really like a bunch of women sitting around. We would often have a topic, like our relationships with our mothers or our fathers, or what was adolescence like. And everybody would take turns speaking to that topic. And what you would find was the commonality of the experience. We ended up kind of coalescing with other women who were having these same experiences. So we called ourselves New York Radical Women.
This is not about me. This is about all of us.
We decided to plan a demonstration of the Miss America beauty pageant. It came up as a topic, I think, in one of our consciousness-raising groups, you know, the whole concept of beauty. Who determines what and who is beautiful? Always we were measuring ourselves against this beauty standard that for most of us was impossible, you know? I hardly had tits at all. It was an unattainable, you know, standard. And why? I went off with a small group that Robin Morgan was part of, and she had written the demands that we had. There was another group that met and decided to bring a sheep with a Miss America banner, and another group that brought a freedom trash can and instructed us all to bring articles of oppression, girdles and, you know, nylon stockings and Playboy magazine, things like that, which we threw in this freedom trash can. We went down on the buses. It's probably about 100 people. And it was a very spirited and a lot of fun kind of action. And a few of us got press passes. So we brought a Bolex camera, 16 millimeter, and I brought my Pentax. Several women brought a banner that said Women's Liberation and sat in the balcony. So at an appointed time, they dropped the banner. It was glorious, you know, like it was like one of those things that it was fun. You know, there were lots of hecklers, people saying, oh, yeah.
Well, they are beautiful. That's their problem.
Women look made to be beautiful, honey.
They were making obscene gestures at us. The thing that happened afterwards, though, was there was a lot of misgivings about the fact that we had targeted the contestants more than the institution itself. And we all felt some contrition about that. But on the other hand, it got covered by the press. And from my point of view, that was really equally important, because it signaled to people across the country, to women across the country, that, hey, maybe there's another way to look at this, Maybe I don't have to think about being Miss America, maybe that's just really false and useless and demeaning.
We are a part of those concerned with change. We are a part of those concerned with freedom.
After that, New York radical women kind of busted into two points of view, and I believed that we had to work with men so we could attack the power structure. And W.I.T.C.H was born. That became an acronym for Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell. And we decided to hex Wall Street as our next action.
If we're going to rise out of our oppression, we will have to destroy the American capitalist system.
I stayed with W.I.T.C.H through the October Hex, and then I kind of stopped doing the specifically, feminist stuff out of which I had come and pushed it more in NEWSREEL. My focus became much broader after that.
And now I would like to play one of the new things out of Cuba, titled El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido. El Pueblo Unido, jamás será vencido.
NEWSREEL sent me to Cuba in 1968. It was the 10th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. I flew to Mexico, and then from Mexico to Cuba, because there were no direct flights to Cuba, and in fact, you weren't supposed to go there. I was down there for almost 3 months because me and the other representatives from the alternative media, there were 5 or 6 of us, they were looking for a way to get us back. Normally, when Americans went down there at that time, they would come back on a freighter, then go up to Canada. So they didn't have a freighter that was going up to Canada, and it took that long for them to get one and put us on it. They toured us around the island. We learned so much, and they welcomed me, and I collaborated with them. I started singing in Spanish. I just met wonderful people and learned so much, and came back again. It was a sort of epiphanous experience. It was like another kind of opening for me to embrace the international struggle. Through my involvement with NEWSREEL, I had the privilege of being in touch with many different struggles that were going on in the city. So we had a strong relationship with the Black Panther Party, with the Young Lords Party.
The cops and the Klan work hand in hand. The cops and the Klan work hand in hand. The cops and the Klan work hand in hand.
I have a brother-in-law who is in the Black Panther Party, and he was part of the Panther 21, who were arrested and charged with these outrageous, totally fictional charges of planning conspiracy to bomb department stores, the Botanic Gardens. And it was like a trial that took place over 2 years with exorbitant bails set on the defendants so that they spent most of that time in prison and were eventually acquitted. My sister had a child with my brother-in-law. She would go to court with her kid, and they would search this kid's diaper, before they could go into the courtroom. There was such an intent of destroying the Black Panther Party that came from the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. He had started this organization called COINTELPRO and started this whole campaign of infiltration, of, informants instigating stuff and the violence.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that when these rights are destroyed over long periods of time, it is your duty to destroy or abolish that government.
The Panthers were basically a community organizing group, as were the Young Lords. They were providing free breakfast for children programs, free clothing programs, health programs, testing for tuberculosis, lead poisoning, all of these things that you don't necessarily see. When I was in NEWSREEL, I had started writing songs, and the woman who went down to the Miss America beauty pageant with me, she had a brother. She told me he played bass, and he came over, and I had recently written a song called "I'm Tired of Bastards Fucking Over Me." I sang that for him, and he played along, and it went fine, and he was perfectly unbothered by the song and its content. I got together with him and another guitar player, songwriter, and fiddle player. We've had a band, and it was great. It was really good. And fun, and we started playing in the Slope. We started playing benefit concerts for the fledgling food co-op. And we became kind of known in the neighborhood and, playing at movement events.
Shot the 300-pound man who helped rape her, and he fell dead on the ground. After a while, they brought her to trial for murder in the first degree. The man who had raped her testified against her and naturally got off scot-free. The defense said,
Your Honor, this woman was raped. It's clear that her crime is justified.
The judge said,
We're not here to judge an alleged rape. It's murder for which she's being tried.
The DA said,
Inez, did you take off your panties? Were you wearing a bra? Did you like it?
Inez screamed, I killed him and I'm glad that I did. If the other man died, I'd feel fine. A man on the jury said, after all, they were just trying to show her a good time.
When I formed that band, I got pregnant. And I had been living in a newsreel collective in the Bronx. That's where I had the baby. We all just picked up and moved out of the city. You know, we tried to be country people. Gene, the fiddle player, was out in the garden all the time. It was hard to get him in for rehearsals. And we cooked collectively, and we went to the farmers and got milk, and the women went to the supermarket with big bags, and we shoplifted all the meat we could.
Human Condition was together for 20 years, had a rotating cast of members, released 2 studio albums, played hundreds of shows, and had many fans, among them Jane Fonda, who included the song Tired of Bastards Fucking Over Me as part of FTA, her anti-Vietnam War roadshow.
They whistle for me like a dog, they make noises like a hog. Heaven knows they sure got problems, I agree. But their problems I can't solve, 'cause my sanity's involved, and I'm tired of bastards fucking over me.
And we were invited to go to El Salvador in 1988. They drove us into San Miguel, and we saw that the stage had been built, and it was right in the plaza. Then we got word that the army had come in and torn down the stage. So they were really concerned for our safety. This was over a period of a few hours. So we're sort of just waiting around. So we go by the space, and they say to us, would you be willing to play? We think it's safe. And this is after they check under the bottom of the fans to make sure there are no bombs or anything. And so we say, okay, and we're the first band to play. And we open with this song that says, El Salvador, que viva El Salvador. And there's this helicopter, military helicopter that descends like to the top of the tree and has a machine gun pointing out the door at us. So that was a little disconcerting, but we just played, and everybody got to play, and we went back to the motel that night and had a jam session. Having the repertoire we had, we sang in English, Spanish, Shona, which is from Zimbabwe, Zulu, Xhosa, both languages spoken in South Africa. We became this international band.
Together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all. I say together we can move mountains. Alone we can't move at all.
We stayed together till about 91. And then that was the end. Every 5 years or so, we would do a reunion concert. The last one we did was about maybe 10 years ago, I think. People have died. It's was really sad.
But you won't find our stories in most history books you read. We were there, we're still here, fighting for the things we need.
I had a chorus I founded and directed for 25 years. I just retired a couple years ago. In my chorus, I didn't audition anybody. I said everybody can sing. It just is a muscle, and women found their voices. And my goodness, what a difference it made for them. It would make me cry. But for me, I found my voice, and what a difference that made in my life. And now I feel like over the years, it's been part of my mission to help people find their voices. My goal is to try to emphasize our humanity, because that's where our empathy comes from. Like after Human Condition, I began doing solo stuff, and at some point I was invited to join the staff of United Association for Labor Educators, right? And they were running summer schools for union women, rank and file workers, to teach leadership skills, how to understand their contracts, collective bargaining. And it was this great opportunity for me because, first of all, it was the first time I really was invited to be, as a musician, to be in leadership of an organizing entity and to have a voice. They listened to what I had to say about how to use culture. And there was the embryonic beginning of a show that some of the staff members had put together about women's labor history, including Sojourner Truth, Mother Jones, Dolores Huerta, people that were involved in struggle. And I started learning more and more songs to use. And I wrote the theme song for it. And we named the show We Were There. I've been doing it for 30 years. And I'm really proud of it. Because it's just one of those things that, first of all, the song itself, for women who have not been part of organized struggle to that extent, or, have not have had that kind of class consciousness instilled in them as something to feel proud about, just touches them, and reading the parts of these women who they've never heard of, but now they're speaking the words, of somebody who did incredible things, but were never given credit for or taught as history. I hesitate to give advice. I think that better I tell my story and let young people derive whatever they could derive from it, because it's a different experience now. I realize that. I try to keep up with technology, but we didn't have facial recognition. We didn't have so much surveillance on our private lives. We didn't expose so much about ourselves. Right now, as an older person, and I'm 83, I'm conscious of that being invisible, which as a woman, I was conscious of being invisible for years and still happens. So I think we need to be helpers. We need to help each other, and we help ourselves when we help each other. We all need to learn to fit in with people who live a different reality, to like be curious, be friendly, you know, be kind. You know, you can be badass too. I was a badass, but really what I feel now is just this kinship, you know, with other human beings, and wanting that to grow and wanting that to be full of kindness and be full of awareness, and how we enhance all of our lives by helping each other. Anyway, that's what I have to say about it.
Our job has just begun. It is now time for you to act. To carry on the revolution. What do you say? What do you say?
We didn't come up here to bore y'all with some rap. We came up here to sing and do some poetry. All right? And this is Sister Joan Bird. All power to the people. My name is AFENI Shakur. And this is Beverly Grant, who's going to play her guitar for Joan to sing. Joan wrote some songs that she's going to do them for you. Go on, Joan.
First song that I did in the jailhouse with some sisters, because there wasn't really anything to do as far as recreation and using your time. So we used to sit around and beat on cans, you see. And we put together a song called People, You've Got to Be Free. And it goes something like this. Oh, people, please listen to my plea. We've got to be free. We've got to be free. Oh, deprived of our human dignity. We've got to be free. We've got to be free.